Every company, from the smallest startup to the biggest enterprise, needs a strategy. It's the North Star that points the way towards bigger and better things for the company and its customers. It should be a clear direction, a practical roadmap, and a shared story so compelling that it guides every decision and action inside the company. When everyone outside of the exco believes in the strategy, understands the plan, and importantly knows what to do next and what not to do next, momentum builds fast. But get the launch wrong, and even the best ideas can stall or fail. In this episode, we're not going to talk about how an exco would build and set a strategy. That's the topic of an upcoming episode. But we are going to talk about how you launch it so that everybody understands it, owns it, and delivers it. Today's guest is Andy Toor, a people and strategy specialist with a background in organizational design and culture change. He helps bridge the gap between the leadership teams and the teams who are responsible for evangelizing and implementing the strategy across the organization. So whether you are a member of an exco with a strategy and you don't want to see it fail at the first company all hands, or whether you're part of that team whose job it is to make it come true, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Andy, thank you so much for joining us here on Build Your Edge today. Now, today's topic is about when a company sets their strategy, and it typically happens in the C-suite's room, and then how they communicate that back out into the rest of the business so that it has a chance of being understood and therefore being executed. And therefore, of course, the company hits its goals. And I mean, I've been in those rooms where I hear the conversations, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, no one outside of this room is going to understand that. So, what chance does it have? Before we dive into the subject itself, I'm sure that a lot of people watching or listening will be wondering, who's Andy? Why would Andy be here talking about that? Perhaps you can give us a bit of a background into what got you interested in this topic.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me, Jeremy. It's great to be here. I have worked in the people forum in organizations of all sizes, being one of the most important resources. Businesses are made by people for people. So communication of activities, communication of work is something that I found really interesting. And I've always hit problems and the same problems no matter where I go. And strategy is something that I just find really fascinating. Like, I'm always thinking a few steps ahead. I'm always wondering what's the bigger picture here. And I'm always inquisitive and asking why. What's the point? Why? Do you mean
what's the point of the strategy? Do you mean like the strategy they've picked?
Yeah. What's the point of that? Why are you doing that? We are the voice of the employees as a populace, almost playing devil's advocate, sort of part of the role that we have. And the other sort of privilege we have in people functions is we don't suffer from the same type of operational fatigue that our colleagues do. So we get to see how things fit together objectively. And without bias, because those are the playing fields. So yeah, I've just spent a lot of my career wondering how people and businesses and money and customers all fit together and work together cohesively to get the best out of each other. And that's a puzzle piece that I find really fascinating, because it is different everywhere you go.
It's interesting you mentioned there. I mean, you began by saying you're the sort of the voice of the people, which is the people inside the company.
Mm-hmm.
And I always talk about this hierarchy, which is customer, company, team, self. So in many ways, the people you speak about are sort of self and team.
Yeah.
But then you went on to say you're interested also in what the customer wants. And in my mind, the customer is the most important person. So I guess my challenging question to you would be,
Mm.
why does it matter what the people think when actually we're trying to deliver value for the customer?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. Firstly, customers will, depending on the type of customer you have and the relationship you have with them, some of them will be really vocal in giving you the feedback and insight that you need in order to create these strategies that will work because, essentially they will buy whatever it is that you're trying to sell. But their main connection point into your organization are the self. They're the individuals that are interacting on a day-to-day basis. They are the people that are seeing the frustrations build up, seeing the requests come through, understanding these. Sometimes they are also the consumer of the products that you're selling, depending on your business. So they are an entry point and one that I think isn't leveraged enough within organizations. They're also the ones that are going to carry out the strategy. So you can have great ideas at the top, but if there's nobody doing the tactical stuff, then, that strategy doesn't move. It's like taking the wheels of a car, just not going to work.
Right. And we're going to talk a lot more about your approach and your
Mm,
free download, which we'll get into later on.
mm,
But I think the thing that I have seen, and I think you're alluding to the same thing, which is, again, if you come back to that hierarchy, customer, company, team, self, it's typically the company that sets that strategy and
yeah.
says, yeah, this is our new target market. This is a new product stream. This is a new way we're going to do things.
Mm,
They're pretty clever, smart people, and they're
yeah.
very close to the customer.
Mm.
In your experience, where does it then typically fail? So they sit in a room and they go, right, this is our strategy. Da-da, go do it. Where does the rest of that process fail?
So depending on your organization, you need to think as an exec how do I make this relatable? How am I thinking about this with enough depth that this isn't just a loose vision? I understand what we need to do. We as a collective group need to do, but how do I make and translate this messaging across the organization so other people do? How do I manage that change? And above anything else, how do I get them to buy this idea? You know, people freely buy their own idea. That's it. Like, there's never any resistance to your own idea. Who will buy it? It's the one that you sell the best to yourself. But with others, they need to feel as though they're part of that process. And they're human beings. So there is that psychological aspect that needs to be taken into consideration. So I find that there tends to be a fracture somewhere in that hierarchy chain, somewhere someone has. I mean, we've all heard about sort of whispering games where we start with an original message and by the end of the chain, we've come up with something totally random.
Yeah.
That can happen. That happens amongst human beings. So the trick is to make sure that that messaging is consistent regularly throughout the process.
So I think I heard two things in there. One is having something that people can believe in. In other words,
Mm,
the meat and vegetable, if you like, of the strategy makes sense.
mm,
And the second thing is the way in which you communicate that so that
mm,
everybody can understand it. Is that fair?
mhm. Yeah, I think that's spot on. Clarity of message, um, and then execution of that messaging across an
Yeah.
organization.
I've definitely been there myself where you come out of a typically several month long process and say, right, we've
Mm,
now got the strategy. And I'm going to be deliberately stupid here, but you
mm,
then go out to your teams and you say, right, we're heading towards the enterprise market, for
mm,
example. And then everyone in the company looks at you and says, but why? Like
mm,
corner shops are our
mm,
market. That's where we exist. And that's what we should be. Are you stupid? Are you people
mm,
stupid to go right now? Let's go to the enterprise market.
mm,
And I know that we're going to talk a lot about communication in this, but
mm,
but what's the sort of simple way to get over that where you get everybody on board with this is a complete change of direction. It's a
mm,
big strategy change.
mm.
We now need to focus on a different market segment, for example.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think when when you're part of that exec co and you're sitting in those meetings and you're getting all your data points, the people that are immediately surrounding you, your direct reports, for example, will have an idea of things that are happening. You're asking them for data requests. You're making sort of requests of their time. They're giving you lots of information. But there's layers upon layers within the organization that will not understand that that's happening. When you've been locked in a room talking about this stuff for 5 months, you'll understand it. You'll have gone on that journey. It will have taken you lots of time. You will be so used to it. But that is not the journey that everybody else in the organization has been in. So there'll be a sort of first stage of individuals that will have an awareness. And then when you go to present, this is a slide deck. This is what we're going to do. Let's ask questions. Let's have this. We've got an idea. You create those forums. Some great execos will go and do that really early in their strategy process and bring the entire org with them as much as they can. Others will not have the expertise within their org to do that, resources to do that. So they're kind of doing it this way. Those individuals will have some sort of awareness or buy-in. They're already prepared for it to happen. But then you're leaving that messaging usually from what I see, in their hands. So unless they fully understand what it is, you'll be, say, up on a podium talking about the big stuff, but they're the ones that have to turn this into tactical knowledge. These are the individuals that control the weather within your organization. These are the ones that will have to deal with the queries. So they need to be able to answer them. They need to be able to come back to it. So really, them understanding what they're carrying out is of the utmost importance. It's implementation of that strategy. I think also just having integrity and trust and openness is key. So think about what people's objections might be early on in the process. Where might people get afraid of change? There's great models out there that you can use, like Kotler's 8 stages. Where are they going to get changed? That model, Kotler's 8 change model, talks about resistance to change. It talks about steps that an organization can take to minimize the resistance of change from the organizations, from the employees, if you like, and from other stakeholders outside as well. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't talk about clarity. People also resist confusion. And I think that's something that people always forget. And that's why I'm focusing on it, because I don't think I've not seen enough airtime on it. But if you can marry those two, what is the message, and why? How do we make this so it's not confusing? How do we translate this into people understanding? Through their jobs, through their roles, through their levels within an organization, their background. Where are they in the globe? It really does depend on the org. And how am I going to get my managers to make sure that that's clear to them as well? And a lot of people are inquisitive, like myself. They want to see the entire roadmap. And I think what's interesting with strategy is a lot of people think it's like a really detailed plan, but that's not actually what a strategy is. A strategy is a process that you go through to define how your business is going to thrive. So it's very different to the plan and the roadmap. So I think sometimes we need to clarify strategy, roadmap, two different things. We're here communicating a vision, and this is the plan that we think, and these are the points that you can kind of come in. And yeah, if your workforce are coming back and saying, we go for, maybe as an exec co, you consider that. Is there a small portion of resources that we can do to maintain that client base? Do we have like forums with individuals where they can voice what that concern is with that change? How can we win them over with this? What exercises can we give people to get them to come to the same conclusions that we did? What were the turning points in those 5 months? Where were the aha moments for us? Did we document them? How do we get our people to have those same aha moments? Because they need to feel as part of that process. And I guess that's kind of the juxtaposition that I really enjoy. And that's what my department is in part responsible for.
Right. And you mentioned quite rightly that the strategy typically is a long process. 5 months is not unreasonable, where
No.
a room of people get together, consistently talk it through.
Mm.
And I've seen myself in that meeting. Even you get maybe a CEO that's read a book,
Mm,
And that then becomes the strategy. And there's head scratching inside that room for 5 months until they
mm,
get it.
mm,
And then there's almost this sort of watershed moment, maybe a company
mm,
kickoff or something where,
mm,
a few people will stand on stage and say, "This is our strategy."
mm,
And they expect everyone just to kind of adapt it and adopt it and understand it instantly
mm.
when they haven't had the privilege of that 5 months. So
Yeah.
in your view, do you think that, um, there's a sort of a kickoff moment where you say, look, we have a new strategy, and then you're done and you sort of train your people to carry it forward? Or do you think it's a longer process for the exco to consistently stand on stage and consistently talk to people over a period of time so that it embeds?
Mm. I think you're seeing an evolution of town halls, adoptions of, leadership connecting with, essentially the grassroots of their organizations, kind of creating that flow of information. Because orgs are just flows of information, lots of little projects being pulled together in order to reach a destination with the resources that you have. I think it's important for Execco to prime an organization through its managers in what the strategy would be, whether that's in your strategy phase of maybe having workshops with the organization. What would you like to see? Putting out pulse surveys. It is a responsibility, I've got to say, of employees of organizations when they do get these surveys, partake in them. If you're not partaking
Hmm.
in them, then you've contributed to maybe the lack of clarity that you have or the slight resistance that you might demonstrate because it feels like a change. But really, there would have been a lot of asking of questions over a period of time. And if you partook in them, then that would have given information to that 5 month strategy process, if you like. If you didn't,
Right.
then they're limited on their information. So everybody has responsibility for that.
Right.
I
So I
think,
think what I'm hearing there is you sort of warm the people up so they
yeah,
know it's coming and get them to be involved, even if they're not involved in the decision making
yeah,
process. They're involved
absolutely.
in the awareness of the process so that when it happens, it's not a complete surprise and they feel
Yeah,
engaged.
yeah. It's about getting your organization to understand that you're constantly evolving depending on what's
Yeah.
going on in the market. And that's
Yeah.
normal, that's natural.
So what changes then? If an exco have a good strategy and they
Mm.
communicate it well and everybody in the company hears it and believes it and understands it, what's the sort of big sea change? What radically changes inside that organization? What feels better because the exco have communicated their strategy correctly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's about, can people explain your strategy back to you with clarity and minimal words? I always challenge people. Can you say what you want to say in less than 10 words? Because that really forces you to think about what it is that you're saying. Every word counts. You're not likely to waffle or sort of change your thought process or think out loud. But that really is the key point. When you know they've got it, and then afterwards, it's essentially seeing it come into fruition. That's how you know it's come to
And
pass.
what does that feel like? Because obviously, yeah, maybe it's an annual strategy. You set some goals that in a year's time will be boom. But presumably there's day to day,
Yeah.
conversation to conversation type changes. What changes at that level?
So you'll see, it's successful when you see your vocabulary being absorbed within an organization. That's something I like. When I hit an organization, I might be new to that organization. I know that I have influence when I am hearing other people use words that I am saying. A unique vocabulary. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I've got to that level within an organization. Oh, I'm over there now, am I? It's sort of like, and it's interesting because other people adopt it. And I take that as a huge compliment, but it's just a signal. It's a little echo for me to kind of see what's going back, what's coming back. That I encourage organizations to do. People will be talking about it. People will be excited about it. people will be hitting metrics on it, whether that's utilizing KPIs because it's a short-term project and you need to get something done, whether you've used OKRs to do that more shifty work within that transformational piece in changing and winning hearts and minds. Because if you can win hearts and minds, then you have advocates within the organization that carry that messaging forward. So utilize advocates and champions where you can. They do so much work for you within an organization. And because they get it, they're usually able to translate it into everyday understanding for everybody within the organization. And there's lots of people in your organization, I think sometimes forget they're busy. We're paying them
Yeah.
to be busy. They haven't got time to sit down and think about this. This is not their day job. Their day job is answering phone calls or emails or whatever it might be that they're doing for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm reflecting on what you were saying about what you hear back. And
Mm.
in my experience, there are two different types of fire. One
Mm-hmm.
is the place is on fire with rage and anger because we don't understand this strategy. It makes no sense to me. And
Mm,
I'm going to do everything I can to burn it down and prove to you that I am wrong and that you are. So I'm right and you are wrong. That's
mm,
one fire, which you don't want. And the
no.
other fire is where people are just lit up and they get
Mm,
the strategy and they go, this makes complete sense. And then micro decisions that get made in a meeting are referencing that strategy
mm-hmm.
because they're on fire and they're excited by it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Conflict or consensus. Absolutely, 100%.
Yes.
One,
You
one,
said,
one is a pleasure to work with.
yeah, you said that way better than me because you're an expert. But yes,
So,
let's get practical. Let's look at what you've left behind because, like every guest, you have spent the time to put together a beautiful handout which people can download for free at the end of this episode and
mm,
put it into practice.
yeah,
Now, there's several parts of it. We may not get to go through all of it today because people can download it and see it.
oh,
But I'd love to start with the three questions that you have,
yeah,
which I think are a sort of a litmus test almost to
they are.
say, has
They are.
this strategy embedded? Let's walk through those. What's the first? So let's begin by saying, um, who should be asking these questions to who and when? Let's start there.
Yeah. So this is really the point at which the exec code's done their job. They're communicating with their line managers. This is for those managers that now need to take a message that may not have been something that they have come up with, because it's not an idea that they may have evolved or gone through a journey to get to. They have to really test their understanding. So you've got, three questions that I think I like simplicity because we're all really busy, but it's sort of, what does this mean for us or me or my team or my department or my vision or us as a group of people? And what does that mean in a timed sort of period of time, a time frame? So,
So for clarity, these are people who were not in the room and they're
yeah,
hearing this almost secondhand, but they've now got to become the communicators of it to more people.
Yeah, so this is that level of implementers within your
Yep.
organization that will be in control of the departments that, do the tactics, do the actions in order to give you the fruits that you're working hard for. So this is for that level, like understanding what does this mean for us? This is the beginning of that process of what actions do we need to do? What resources do we have within our organizations, our individual verticals, if you like? Do I have the right skill set? Do I have the right people? Do I have the right resources available to me, whether that's from a tech perspective, location perspective, subject matter knowledge, expertise perspective? That's the first sort of question you want to do. And that helps you really understand where some of the questions that you're going to get from other layers are going to start coming in. It gives you that thought process of being able to come up with, this is the why that people will inevitably ask. And you must remember this will help you win people over, not arguments, because you don't want to get into arguments with people. So if you have
Right.
a credible response when somebody asks you why, please don't assume they won't, they will, then you're going to be okay. You're 90% of the way there in your journey because you've done the thinking from their aspect, and that's what people get. They want to see that from you.
So
The-
that sounds key to me. It's not that you're going out and almost inviting um, pushback, and
Mm.
even a debate is to something where you are able to communicate it with enough conviction and
Mm.
simplicity yourself
Mm.
that the people that, because I always say that communication is what the listener does. So when
Yeah.
somebody listens and hears it, they understand it and they believe it.
Yeah. I think another aspect to that is don't assume you're not going to be asked tough questions. Don't assume that people aren't going to ask why. Don't avoid them. Don't be avoidistic in this. And this exercise is about having done that thinking so you're prepared for it. So you don't have to do, let's take it offline, let's do this, let's do that. All the things that we tend to do to avoid, because avoiding adds to the confusion. And that's what we're trying to combat here. And people buy from people. You know, if you're not sold, they're going to pick up on that. We are hardwired to understand when somebody is being avoidant or deceitful or mistrusting. You know, and you have a very few initial opportunities to buy that credibility. So I think the work is really important, and that's what this sort of question is really about drawing out from you.
Andy, I'd go even further. I've
Okay.
heard people say, look, I don't believe in this myself. I think it's the
Mm.
wrong thing, but my
Yeah,
bosses have told me to say this, and
yeah.
therefore that's what we're doing. I don't like it myself, but like, let's do
Mm,
this because
mm,
there's no one around them.
yeah,
One, you look weak,
yeah.
and two, you just blown a hole in the whole strategy yourself,
If
right?
you're not, then why should we? You know,
Exactly.
we've got an ally in resistance. This will require more work, more things to learn. I've got so many things going on in my life right now. I don't have time for this.
So your first question that gets asked is, what does this mean for me slash us in
Hmm.
the next 90 days?
Hmm.
So I'd like to dive into that a bit more. So first of all, is this a question I ask myself and say,
Yeah.
I ask myself this question, now I
Hmm.
get it? Or
Hmm.
am I asking it of other people?
It's you asking yourself for yourself and your teams and your departments. And I pick 3 months because usually, if you're on a quarterly cycle basis or you've got OKRs, this will have an impact on those metrics. How am I going to get it? So, usually, it's like, what do I need to go through in order to get this? I've thought about it. This is when somebody says, oh, how is it going to affect my job? Well, we're going to have to change KPIs for this. It means that your call times might be slightly different. It means the targets are going to be slightly different. It's reassuring and giving them an opportunity. It's not because business is in trouble. It's because we're going for a new market share. We've done a bit of horizon scanning. So it's really being able to understand all of that so that you can go in there with confidence and understanding and be able to communicate clearly. It's also a wonderful exercise to go back to your manager and go, have I got this? I'm right? I don't also, opposite, I suppose, to the I don't buy this is not understanding it and having to go back and correct it later. That also has an
Yeah.
impact on ability and clarity as well.
Yeah. And I've experienced that firsthand, that sort
Mm.
of slight piece of doubt.
Mm.
I don't quite understand it, but I don't feel brave enough or something to go back and ask
Mm.
because it makes
Mm.
me look stupid or maybe
Mm.
a non-believer.
Or I wasn't
But if you
listening.
do,
Or, hmm.
or I wasn't listening or something,
Yeah.
and so therefore we sit with that doubt and we go, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll get over it. But that piece of
Mm.
doubt shouts loud and clear to everybody that you're talking about. So this
Mhm.
question to really ask yourself, okay, what does this mean for me, us, my teams, whoever, for the next 90 days?
Mm.
If I cannot answer that properly, I have some work to do
Yeah.
myself before I can begin to communicate the strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all part of this sort of recency effect that you have with information or something that's new. Humans grab onto that really quickly. So you want to get it right first time round, and it's worth putting in the time and it's worth looking at yourself and it's worth kind of, I suppose, getting over that imposter syndrome sometimes that you have with if I go back and blah, blah, blah. It's about offering clarity to you and being prepared to succeed in these conversations.
Yeah. And in my experience, actually, if you do go back with those questions, say, look, I'm a
Mm.
little unclear about this particular thing. Could
Mm.
you help me out?
Mm.
The person that's passing the message to you to then convey on is actually pretty happy you've asked,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they will help you clarify that. So the first question is, what does this mean for me, us in the next 90 days? I've now got a really clear idea about what this strategy means imminently.
Mhm.
Your second question is, what do we stop doing? Why
Mhm.
do you ask that question?
I think it's really important for people to understand, how is this going to affect the people that I'm communicating to? Because we know, or studies show, or just being a human being will tell you want to understand, how does this affect me? So normally it's a case of, we need to stop this. And I think that's a nice way to start, because what you're doing in this particular moment is thinking about how you're gifting your team's time and resource
Perfect.
and energy. Because if you're just going in and saying, we need these things from you, they are going to be visualizing their already busy days and under resourced departments from their perspective, as maybe the common sort of thought process that individuals have. But if you gift them time straight away on what they can stop doing, I think that's really helpful. And that helps you begin to win their minds and hearts, hearts and minds. Um, and it kind of, I found it really helpful. It's a really useful tactic that I've used. It's sort of like, I'm giving you this to prevent an argument.
Yeah,
And then this is what we need you to do now.
I, I love it. So what you're really saying to your teams is, here's the new direction, whatever that means. And we're talking a lot about the first 90 days because it's immediate and obvious.
Mm-hmm,
And you're then also carving out, you're saying these things that we were doing, they're
mm-hmm,
no longer part of the strategy. We can stop those. So as
mm-hmm,
you're right, already in my head, I'm saying, oh, relief. I don't need to do
mm-hmm,
those things. I've got
mm-hmm.
time. And then that naturally leads on to the third question, which is, what do we now start doing? Which presumably is different things.
Yeah, in my experience, people are really good at replicating a message, giving it parrot fashion, not really deeply understanding it. So that's a journey that this questionnaire is designed to take you on. But also, I think where people really fail sometimes, and that might come across strong, but they do fail, is they fail to think about what this means for the individuals. Like, what are they going to do? What is it that you're doing? Give them clarity, not confusion. I want to know what I'm going to be doing. Am I doing this? Am I not doing that? Do I, where am I going to be? What am I going, do I have the resources? Those are the kinds of things. So this is really that thought process, and it's all to help you understand, so that you've got conviction in what you're saying.
Yeah. And it also strikes me that if you're not explicit about stop doing these things, start doing these things,
Mm,
I'll make it up myself. And the chances are I will act in the wrong way. I will
yeah,
continue to do some things which are not needed.
yeah,
And I will start to do some things which are just not heading towards that strategy. So by being
absolutely.
really explicit, I'm removing a lot of doubt.
Yeah, and the reason that you kind of do it in this order is, you will then be able to adjust people's KPIs and OKRs, the things that people are working towards. So the last thing that they remember is, this is what I'm working towards. You need to replace that with something else that they know from their perspective. I'm going to start doing these things because my bonus is attached to this, because that pay request that I've got coming is going to be attached to this, because that promotion I want to go for is attached to this, or because this project that I'm working on is now attached to this, or I need to speak to those individuals, or I've got to redo my resources here. It's really important. Otherwise, they're just going to carry on the path that they've been going on for a while, probably, unless you start to
Yeah.
give them an alternative direction, and start to give them an alternative North Star for them, and what that means for them on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, people will revert to what they know.
That's super interesting that you just said that, because this whole conversation is about the company strategy.
Mm,
But you are so right that um, everyone will be thinking, what's in it for me? And so
mm,
having a personal connection, you talked about not just KPIs, but bonus,
mm,
promotion, recognition. If I
mhm,
carry out the strategy, if I do the right things and help the company,
mm.
it's actually good for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's how people communicate and signal to levels that I'm ready, that I'd like more, that I'm there now, that I'm part of this journey. So yeah, 100% facilitate that where you can.
Great. So those are the three questions that
Hmm.
me, as a somebody just outside the exco,
Hmm.
the new strategy comes, it's given to me, and I'm now a messenger and an executor on that strategy. Those are the three questions that I must ask myself and
Mhm,
help my teams, whatever that looks
mhm,
like,
mhm,
understand.
mhm.
You've also added a 1 minute strategy narrative, which I
Yeah.
presume is something that I almost learn so that I can recite the strategy to my team. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think sometimes, and I've seen this a lot, if we go through the previous exercises, we understand maybe perhaps the individual activities. But it's really important to understand really succinctly what that strategy is, and this is an opportunity to stop and go, okay, I've got to like tick box. I've got to make sure that I'm covering A, B, and C. And I'm going to say it like this. And then that becomes what people will remember, adopt, might be in emails, might be in visuals, might be, at the end of every deck that you're presenting when you're talking about it. But this is like, how do I succinctly give this strategy clarity with it and repetition, because we are human beings. That's how we remember things. So yeah, this is a stop moment to kind of go, how am I going to say this? What feels natural to my org? What feels natural to me? It's just a moment to sort of reflect for yourself to kind of go, I've got to make sure that this is what I'm saying, because this is a real nice synopsis of the strategy. Yeah.
So if there are, I'd pick a number, let's just say there are 50 people who are just outside the exco, and there are 50 people who need to come up with that 1 minute strategy narrative.
Mm,
Should each one of those people come up with their own version, or should there be one version given to them so that they're all saying the same thing? Because you touched on it must feel natural to me. And if you put the words into my mouth, they may not feel natural. But
mm.
equally, if you allow me to pick my own version, suddenly you could have deviation.
Yeah. So I would say the strategy narrative really comes from your exec co. So this is in a bite-sized chunk. This is what we're hoping to achieve. This is our sort of first year, first quarter. This is what we need to do. It's the announcement phase of the strategy, and then you're kind of leading with however long it might be. Really depends on organizations. They could be for a matter of months. They can be for 5 years. It really does depend on where you are and what you're doing and who you're working for. So this is what you're giving as that sort of this is what this is a strategy in its most concentrated form. Memorize it. But if as a line manager you want to adopt that and that feels natural to you, take it. If it doesn't, it's a great reference point for you to kind of go making sure I've got to cover all of this. This is essentially what it is. And you can put your own spin if it kind of adds to you. But we've really got to be careful of that whispering down that chain, because this is where messaging starts to get maybe warped slightly, inconsistent. This is where you're at risk of things ending and sounding totally different from the original message. So, as close to this as you possibly can is probably what I would recommend. And having it written down and having it clear means that you've always got a point to come back to prevent that from happening further down the chain.
Yeah. And also, interestingly, earlier on, you said when constructing that, um, I need to construct this because I need to get across A, B, and C. So, sort of the
Hmm.
three key
Hmm.
points. So, I suppose that if the exco is super explicit about at least A, B, and C,
Mm,
with a suggestion of, and here's a 1 minute pitch,
mm.
the 1 minute pitch can be marginally different, but as long as it covers off A, B, and C, collectively, we're in a good space.
Yeah, there is expectation set on. You will know as a line manager who is responsible for implementing the strategy. You know what they are looking for. They have told you
Right.
very clearly, this is where our eyes are now. This is what we want to see. This is what we're measuring. And they've put a time to it as well, because sometimes we forget the basics. Sometimes we just forget to do the basics, and this entire worksheet is about making sure that you don't forget to do the basics because they are important. Otherwise, it would be the basics.
Yeah.
We all know.
And then, of
We
course,
all know that.
and then it leads naturally into,
Mhm,
and therefore we stop doing these things and we start doing these things.
mhm,
And now I
mhm.
have understanding and context. I understand why we're stopping doing those things because they're no longer relevant.
Yeah.
And I will start doing these things because they help us. And it all hooks
Mhm.
back to that one
Yeah.
minute narrative. And you've also given us a 15-minute team conversation guide. What's that?
So I think it's really helpful as somebody that's been a partner to operations within organizations and other support functions. It might be great that I say, this is what you need to do, but we've got lots of different learner types out there and lots of different people absorb information in different ways. I always find it helpful to kind of go, here's a loose script. These are the key points that you want to talk about. This is something you can do. Here's something to keep it in a time efficient way. It's more a suggestion for you, an invitation to maybe this is a format that you want to consider. And that's essentially what it is. A 15-minute conversation with your smaller teams. This is something you might want to pull together or rehearse with the layer underneath yourself, as you get closer to the individuals that are going to be your success for your new strategy. So this is kind of filtering down that information and making it more absorbable. And this is just a thought process on what you could go through and how to stay on point, because it's
Right.
really important to make sure you're staying on point with the messaging. You're not going
Yeah.
down lots of little rabbit holes. You're not putting yourself in a position where you're likely to say, oh, I see your logic, but I need to think about your logic, and your logic supports yours, but I also need to go back and think about the data that, isn't forthcoming at this particular moment in time. I think sometimes we can get trapped in that with individuals or groups of people. So this is really about kind of like keeping things timed, keeping things clear, keeping a format that works really well. And it's efficient as well because you get to do multiple people and you give them
Yeah.
a forum to voice and take away and make notes, and gives you food for thought to pass up as well.
And of course, if I'm a manager of managers, which I likely am going to be,
Mm,
if I'm very well practiced in that
mm,
and I'm consistent with my peers, my people on the same level,
yeah.
when that goes to the managers that I am managing, they will repeat that exercise. And
Yeah,
if the message is consistent, they will flush it down the organization consistently as
absolutely.
well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And because you're following a format, you're able to assess against that format. Not just that, but this is also part of that buy-in process. So you've thought about what you need to start and stop. This is where you start to find your champions. I've got to get you involved in this. This is kind of what I've thought about stopping and starting. I'm not as close to the ground. I'm not sure what's live at the moment. Why don't you tell me a few things? Have a think about it. Let's have a conversation about it. That might change what it is that you thought. It might enhance it, it might add to it, it might make it redundant. You never know. It's about making sure that they're part of that journey. They understand it. You've got lots of questions because these are opportunities to, yeah, have conversations, and you're quite close to that strategy decision making group of individuals at this stage. And then it helps you cascade it down, and it
Yeah.
yeah, gives that buy-in and clarity.
Let's turn the conversation now to this exercise has been completed. So
Mm,
Exco have got their new strategy.
mhm,
They've produced almost this communication deck.
mhm,
I've received that. I've asked myself the questions. I understand
mm,
now what this means for me and us in our next 90 days.
mhm,
I'm very clear on what I need to stop, what I need to
mhm,
start, and I've begun that communication process. Now it's happening.
mm.
How do I make sure that, pick a time span, let's say a month in, that actually it's landed correctly, that everyone does understand it consistently, and also that the actions and the movement is going in the right direction? How do I be sure that my strategy is being implemented?
Yeah. So this is where that key OKR process, KPI process, depending on what you've adopted. Um, my preference would be OKRs for something like this, simply because they are clear, concise, reviewable, and their time period KPIs are slightly different. But yeah, you want to have thought about that earlier on in the process. What does that 90-day look like? This is where you really start to see the fruits of that thought process, that thinking process, that articulating what good will look like at some point in the future, clarifying it with the level above, because you will know. Your OKRs are there. You've communicated them in actions. You are then just following what you would normally do for OKRs in your quarterly reviews, monthly reviews, whatever it is. Are we on track?
Right.
So,
Can I challenge you slightly? Because
yeah.
OKRs particularly over a quarter, they tend to be a bit lagging. You don't want to wait to get to 90 days and go, right, how are we doing? Oh my word, we're off track.
Yeah.
So is there anything I can be doing, day 2, week 2, much earlier? Are there any signs and symptoms which are not even KPIs or OKRs, but just things that I can see and feel that
Mm.
I know actually, yes, this has landed, everyone's on it, and we're heading in the right direction?
Absolutely.
Or indeed the wrong direction, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely. OKRs, I definitely don't think they need to be put away for 3 months being a HR professional.
Right.
I think they're a
Yeah,
live
of course.
document. In your weekly one-to-ones, they should be the structure of your conversation. You should be able to form, what questions do I need to ask on a weekly basis? What data do I want to see on a weekly basis? What are those questions? Put them into your one-to-ones in addition to all of the other things that you want to cover in your one-to-ones. Give it some structure. But signals that you will see adoption in all parts of your business. You'll start to see a synergy between different teams that are critical for seeing your strategy come alive. You'll see people asking questions in your regular town halls. They'll be asking questions in other things. Your HR department might start, work with IT and make them your screensaver, for example. They might become part of your online portals. There'll be reference points, discussion boards, all sorts of things going in there. It's that level of engagement that you're getting, not just what managers are saying to you. And you'll start to see it in the language. People are using this. They're starting to talk about what it is that your vision is hoping to achieve. And that's when you really start to see it taking root. Some things that might help you expedite that. We've touched on it a little bit before, and I've said the word a few times. I need to reinforce it. Are champions. It's a real great tool that I use to leverage. So throughout this process, you'll have lots of people that are okay with the status quo as it used to be. But there's going to be a layer of people out there that are wishing for change, that see the frustration in a different way. They will be your biggest advocates. Find them, let them talk. Buy-in happens. Sometimes it is just a numbers game.
Right.
But yeah, you'll start to really see it in there.
And I can't be scientific about this, so I'm
Mm,
going to use some numbers which are probably wrong, but let's just pick 80-20 for now.
sure.
In my experience, if you do this well, you'll get 80% of people who are on board
Mm-hmm.
and they're motoring and they're doing everything right, but you've still got that 20%, which, they ask the tough questions consistently in
Mm,
the all hands about the strategy, and they challenge and they say, you haven't listened to us. You
mm,
didn't ask us. You didn't consult us. I don't believe in this. We're doing the wrong thing. Watch
mm,
me. I'll prove
mm.
you. How do you handle that 20%? Because that 20% can become 80% of the anchor almost. They can slow things
Yeah,
down, make other
yeah,
people
yeah.
worry, think, challenge. And you don't want that. How do you handle that 20% without just squashing them?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I'm always, as a HR sort of people individual, I'm always going, what's their fear? What are they afraid of? All paths always lead to fear. So what is the fear that they're resistant to? Can I get them to understand that? Because sometimes they don't. And am I able to understand that? That then gives me a really great foundation to build a relationship with individuals. The other part, and I touched on it a little bit before, and I'll bring it back up here, is highlighting to employees their responsibility for taking part in certain things. There's been loads of times that I've not filled out a survey because it's not important, it's not a priority, you know, and there will be things in that will have contributed to the messaging. So one of my other questions is, did you do those things? Have you done those things? Did you do those things? And tell them these were great opportunities for you to be part of the discussion process. Also, I go through, we've done these stages. So where is it you don't feel like you're aligned? So I like to think about all of those things. And I personally like to address them in a conversation. I don't have an issue with being uncomfortable when somebody wants to make an environment uncomfortable. I have no issue dealing with an issue as it is and talking about the elephant in the room, if you like. That's not something I have a problem with. I know that sometimes individuals do, and they can be evasive, and it's a power dynamic here. People are trying to retain some sense of control over it. And the fundamental fear maybe, is my job going to go? Do I have to
Hmm.
learn something new? And that is a really difficult thing to answer. We won't know. There's a lot of I don't knows in strategy that we try to fill in and that we can try to do our best with. I think sometimes in my experience, it's been we don't know that yet. Data hasn't fully come in. But what is it that you're afraid of? What is it that you would like to see? Continue that conversation. But the underlying thing, without putting a sort of depressive stance on it, is mainly, am I going to end up losing my job as a result of this? That's very current, with the use of AI technology. Is this something going to do it? So that's one of the questions that I try to ask right away. Are we leveraging this technology as a cost saving exercise, or are we doing it because we know we can get more out of our people and therefore offer more? How are we going to answer that question? And then it's a case of factoring that into the conversation and the process. I would also encourage people, don't treat people as though they're silly or stupid. You know, you might not be able to say anything, but don't treat them like they're stupid. There's an element of compassion and empathy in your way of communicating with individuals that are those 20%. Also flips on the side, not all of that 80% will be sold. A lot of them may be doing lip service for you.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why you
true.
have your data, your metrics, your touch points. Are you able to repeat what the strategy is to me as it was communicated? Am I hearing the same things back? So there's lots of layers to some of the exercises that I've given you that will things that you can utilize in future conversations as things evolve.
Andy, I want to pick up on something. You've mentioned the word champions a few
Mhm.
times, and I've used champions in lots of different contexts, particularly things like company values. You pick somebody
Mm,
who is a champion for a value and they become the evangelist. Do you think that's applicable here as well?
mm. Yeah, great question. Um, I do. I believe champions are. See, I like to be innovative in my thinking. I like to think, what tools do we have? How do humans operate? What does the organization need? How do people socialize within that organization? Bit of sociology coming in there. How do groups of people react with one another? So, this entire thing is about finding people that are advocates for it within their own team. People will listen to other team members more frequently because these individuals are experts at translating this into what's important for their teams, and they'll know what's going on as well. And they can bring that why to the information that security had. So it's a really good juxtaposition between those. And then you go back to your execco and give them an update with, this is what we found, this is what we're doing. So yeah, that strategy champions can be exactly the same. A form of individuals, people that want exposure, people that want to have more projects, people that want to move in their career and try new things. These are wonderful projects to get those individuals in. If you have a stars program, for example, in an organization, this is great for those people. Gives them an opportunity to kind of influence. This is influence learning skills without authority, which is a very different skill set, but so useful to you as an individual. Gives you your edge.
Yeah, build your edge. Why not? Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and
This goes towards that.
and you get those people in a room
Mhm.
from all over the business, and they've all
Yeah.
got sort of a common interest. And you're right, the energy that you find and the synergy in that room, and the ideas and the creativity, it's a really powerful place.
Absolutely. And the exposure that they're given, the insight they give you, it's a really, really nice place to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, it gives you consistency. And it just gives you lots of different people, little points across the business. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. Definitely a fantastic thing to do. Definitely needs to be given clarity and managed in a really nice way. And those conversations need structure. So they're not just, conversations for the sake of having conversation, because
Yeah.
that will have the opposite effect. That'll evaporate really quickly. People will stop wanting to engage with that because they'll perceive it as a waste of time.
But if you've done your homework earlier and you've
Hmm.
got your narrative and
Hmm.
your 1 minute message, you can use them in there. And almost
Yeah.
at the beginning of every session, just say, "Hey, remember, this is why
Yeah.
we're here."
Yeah.
Keep
And
everybody on
wrapping up.
track.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also how do you apply what you've just said to this? Say what you
Yes.
wanna say
Come back
and
to the values. Yep.
yeah, yeah, you can see the
Yeah.
thought process that I've gone through when I
Yeah.
was, cultivating this.
Andy, I want to thank you so much.
Mhm.
We've been through such a lot, and it's such an important topic because a company lives or dies really by its
The
strategy, but not
success.
not
Yeah.
just its strategy, but how it's then implemented.
Mhm,
Before I let you go,
mhm,
um, if someone's listening to this
mhm,
and they're in that group of the enablement team, really, which is the
mhm,
people outside of the exco, the fun part, we've done the strategy, hey, here it is, sort of
mm,
throw it over the fence. I'm
mhm,
in that enablement group and
mm,
I've got to carry this strategy out.
mm.
What's the one thing that you would like me to remember from this session?
Um, I think it's really important to remember people equally resist confusion as they do change. So if you can take that out of the equation, it'll help with
Interesting.
the other. That's what I think.
Right. Right. So we're bringing clarity
Mhm.
even if they don't initially accept it and believe it and go, yep, I'm on it. If
Mm.
you've removed the confusion, you
Mhm.
have reduced the barriers to acceptance.
You have. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's the unspoken
Fantastic.
part of change management that I think gets overlooked quite a lot, that confusion. It is the feedback that I see the most. We don't know, they didn't know, we didn't know what's going on. Yeah, you'll hear it a lot
And
now
therefore I
that I've
don't
said
like
it,
it.
you'll
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Of
that's
course.
another form. That's another form of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that would be my main
Yeah.
takeaway because it really does boil down to clarity.
Cool. So your handout is available to download at
Mhm,
buildyouredge.org/downloads. So
mhm,
people can go there. There's a link to this whole episode. They can
mhm,
find your contact details.
mhm,
You have a lot of experience of this, and this has all come from your experience. If somebody wants to talk to you about this and find out a bit more about you and
mm.
what you have done and get some advice from you even,
Yeah.
how should they get hold of you?
They can reach out to me on email. They can have a quick look on LinkedIn for me. I am a massive advocate or champion, if you like, of freedom of information. Like, just give you as much as I can, pass it on, learn to learn quickly, help you on that journey. Because I think it just makes for a better workforce and it just makes for connection, something that I'm really passionate about. But yeah, feel free to reach out with anything, anything really.
Perfect. Thank you so much indeed,
Mhm.
Andy. Um, I've experienced this myself. I've been lucky enough to be in the room where we set the strategy,
Mm,
and
mm,
I've also been just outside the room, and you're sort of almost waiting for it to come out, and then it's
mm,
up to you to take that strategy forward.
mm.
And it can be difficult. It can be
Mm,
really difficult because you are your job now is almost to persuade people.
mhm,
Some people don't want to hear it, right? And there's always resistance, but your job is to communicate this out now and get it
mm,
embedded and get everybody moving in the right direction.
mm,
And it can be difficult. It can be
mm.
really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So what you've been through today is such a leap forward. It's really helpful. And I think that
Mm,
if anybody is watching or listening who finds himself in that spot, it's well worth downloading it. And
mm,
also I would say if you're in the exco, if you're one of these people who's setting that strategy,
mm.
bear this in mind because it
Yeah,
may change the way you roll it out.
absolutely. 100%. I think the earlier you get into the frame of mind and the psyche of your organization and how it's likely to respond, and above everything else, remember that you're working with human beings. You have such an edge here. You are a human being. Think about things from a different context. It's about perspective in those moments.
Fantastic. Thank you
Mm.
so much indeed, Andy, for the time that you've spent not just recording with us here, but all of the preparation. I say it on every episode, every guest spends a
Mm.
long time preparing so that the audience can get some value. So thank you so much for joining in with us. And if you're watching or listening and you think that somebody else might benefit from this, please send them the link and ask them to watch and listen, download Andy's episode, and maybe even reach out to Andy as well. So with that, thank you very much indeed for joining in. See you next time.